What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible in America, but it happened. A man walked into court, confessed to a brutal crime, and the judge let him go free. Meanwhile, his victim sat in the audience, watching justice die right before her eyes. This isn't just one case. It's happening more than you think. And today, you're going to see exactly how the system protects the guilty while punishing the innocent. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, a 23-year-old lady, fresh out of college, working as an elementary school teacher in a small town in Ohio. She loved her job. She loved her students. And she believed in doing the right thing. On a cold November night in 2016, Sarah was walking home from a late parent-teacher conference. It was only 8 p.m., but it was already dark. The streets were quiet. She was just 2 blocks from her apartment. That's when Marcus Webb appeared. He grabbed her from behind, dragged her into an alley. What happened next would change Sarah's life forever. He beat her, robbed her, and left her unconscious in the freezing cold. A jogger found her 3 hours later. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Broken ribs, fractured jaw, severe concussion. But the physical wounds would heal. The emotional scars would last forever. Sarah did everything right. She reported the crime immediately. She worked with police to identify her attacker. She gave detailed statements. She picked him out of a lineup without hesitation. She agreed to testify in court. Marcus Webb had a criminal record. This wasn't his first violent crime. He'd been arrested 4 times before for assault and robbery. Each time, he'd gotten light sentences. Each time, he'd gotten out early. Each time, he'd hurt someone else. But this time, Sarah thought, would be different. This time, there was DNA evidence. Surveillance footage from a nearby store. Her eyewitness testimony. This time, justice would be served. She was wrong. The trial began in March 2017. Sarah sat in that courtroom, hands shaking, as she prepared to face her attacker. She'd spent months building up the courage to testify. She'd gone to therapy, talked to victim advocates, prepared herself for this moment. The prosecutor presented the evidence. The DNA match. The surveillance video showing Webb following Sarah that night. The hospital photos of her injuries. Sarah's own testimony, delivered through tears but with unwavering certainty. It seemed open and shut. Even Webb's own lawyer seemed resigned to losing. The jury looked convinced. Sarah felt like she could finally breathe again. Finally, she thought, this nightmare would end. Then Judge Robert Caldwell made his ruling. But wait, it gets worse. Before the jury could even begin deliberations, Judge Caldwell dismissed the case. He ruled that the DNA evidence was inadmissible due to a technicality in how it was collected. He said the surveillance footage was too grainy to prove identity. He questioned Sarah's ability to accurately identify her attacker because it had been dark. The prosecutor stood up, stunned. Your Honor, the defendant has confessed. And it was true. During the trial, Marcus Webb had admitted to being in that alley. He'd admitted to taking Sarah's purse. He tried to claim it wasn't assault, just a robbery that went too far. But he'd confessed to the core facts of the crime. Judge Caldwell didn't care. Without proper evidence chain of custody, I cannot allow this to proceed to jury deliberation. Case dismissed. Sarah collapsed in the courtroom. Victim advocates rushed to help her. The prosecutor filed immediate appeals. But Marcus Webb walked out of that courthouse a free man. The local news covered it for 1 day. Then the story disappeared. Sarah was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered faith in the justice system. But here's what nobody knew at the time. Here's what nobody investigated until it was too late. Judge Robert Caldwell had connections to Marcus Webb's family. Webb's uncle was a major donor to Caldwell's re-election campaigns. Over the past 5 years, he'd donated over $50,000. He'd hosted fundraisers. He'd made calls to wealthy donors on Caldwell's behalf. This wasn't disclosed to Sarah or her legal team. It wasn't disclosed to the prosecutor. It should have resulted in Judge Caldwell recusing himself from the case. But it didn't. Because nobody checked. Nobody looked into the connections until a local investigative journalist started asking questions 6 months later. And it wasn't just Sarah's case. The journalist, Maria Rodriguez from the Ohio Daily Tribune, found 6 other cases over 3 years where Judge Caldwell had dismissed serious criminal charges against defendants connected to his political donors. 6 other victims who never got justice. 6 other criminals who walked free. In one case, a wealthy businessman's son was charged with vehicular manslaughter after killing a teenager in a drunk driving accident. Caldwell dismissed it on a technicality. The businessman had donated $30,000 to Caldwell's campaign. In another case, a corporate executive was charged with embezzling $2 million from employee pension funds. Caldwell ruled the evidence was obtained improperly. That executive's company had paid for Caldwell's campaign advertisements. The pattern was undeniable. If you had money and connections, Judge Robert Caldwell would find a way to protect you. If you were a victim seeking justice, you didn't matter. Sarah's life fell apart after the trial. She couldn't go back to teaching. Every classroom felt unsafe. Every parent-teacher conference triggered panic attacks. She moved 3 times, unable to sleep knowing Marcus Webb was free and knew where she lived. She attended therapy twice a week. She took medication for anxiety and depression. She lost contact with friends who didn't understand why she couldn't just move on. Her family tried to help, but they couldn't fix what the justice system had broken. Marcus Webb? He was arrested again in 2019. Another assault. Another victim. Another life destroyed because the system let him walk free when it should have stopped him. This time, there was no judge to protect him. He's currently serving 12 years in prison. But he should have been there already, after Sarah's case. That second victim should never have been hurt. Maria Rodriguez's investigation exploded. The story was picked up by national news outlets. The Ohio State Bar Association opened an investigation into Judge Caldwell. Citizens demanded accountability. Victim advocacy groups organized protests outside the courthouse. But what happened next shocked everyone. Judge Robert Caldwell faced an ethics review. The evidence was overwhelming. The pattern was clear. The financial connections were documented. Victims came forward to share their stories. Legal experts called for his removal from the bench. The Ethics Committee issued their decision in November 2019. Judge Caldwell received a formal reprimand, a written warning in his file. He was ordered to take an ethics training course. And that was it. He kept his position. He kept his salary. He kept his power over future cases. The only real consequence was that he couldn't run for re-election when his term ended in 2022. But he could finish his term, making decisions that affected people's lives for 3 more years. The victims were devastated. Sarah felt betrayed all over again. Not only had the system failed to punish her attacker, it also refused to hold accountable the judge who let him go free. They protect each other, Sarah told reporters. The judges, the lawyers, the politicians. They're all part of the same system. And we're just supposed to trust that system to give us justice? How can we? Sarah's story isn't unique. It's part of a much larger problem in America's justice system. According to the Center for Prosecutor Integrity, prosecutorial misconduct occurs in about 550 cases nationwide each year that result in dismissals or reversals. But experts estimate the real number is much higher because most misconduct is never discovered or reported. A 2020 study by the Brennan Center for Justice found that judges who receive significant campaign contributions are more likely to rule in favor of those contributors' interests. In states where judges are elected, campaign donations directly influence judicial decisions. And when judges do face ethics violations, only 5% lose their positions. Most receive warnings, suspensions, or reprimands. They keep their power. They keep making decisions. And victims keep getting failed by the system that's supposed to protect them. But what if I told you there's more to Sarah's story? What if I told you that 3 years after her case was dismissed, something changed? In 2020, everything shifted. The journalist Maria Rodriguez never stopped investigating. She filed Freedom of Information requests. She interviewed dozens of victims. She built an airtight case showing the pattern of corruption in Judge Caldwell's courtroom. The state attorney general finally opened a criminal investigation into Judge Caldwell's conduct. Not just an ethics review this time, but actual criminal charges for obstruction of justice and official misconduct. Sarah found her voice again. She connected with other victims whose cases had been dismissed. Together, they formed a victims' advocacy group called Justice Denied. They lobbied for judicial reforms. They pushed for stricter rules about campaign finance and judicial conflicts of interest. Their work led to real change. Ohio passed new legislation requiring judges to disclose all campaign donors before hearing cases. Judges must now recuse themselves if there's any financial connection to defendants or their families. Violations result in automatic removal from the bench. In March 2021, Robert Caldwell was arrested. He was charged with 7 counts of obstruction of justice and abuse of power. He faced up to 20 years in prison. He pleaded guilty in a deal with prosecutors. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and permanently barred from practicing law or holding judicial office anywhere in the United States. Sarah attended his sentencing. She read a victim impact statement that brought the courtroom to tears. She described the years of trauma, the destroyed career, the broken trust in the system. The knowledge that her attacker walked free because a judge valued money more than justice. "You were supposed to protect me," she told Caldwell. "Instead, you protected the man who hurt me. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And because of what you did to me and others, the system is finally changing." This is the truth about our justice system. It's not broken by accident. It's broken because people in power protect each other. Because money influences decisions. Because victims are treated as inconveniences instead of human beings deserving justice. But Sarah's story also shows us something else. It shows us that change is possible. That speaking up matters. That investigating corruption and demanding accountability can lead to real reforms, since Ohio's judicial reform law passed. Over 40 judges have been forced to recuse themselves from cases due to financial conflicts. 3 additional judges have been removed from the bench for ethics violations. And conviction rates in criminal cases have increased by 12% because cases are now being decided on evidence, not on who can afford to buy influence. Sarah returned to teaching last year. It took 6 years, but she found her way back. She now also speaks at law schools and judicial conferences about the importance of protecting victims and maintaining judicial integrity. Marcus Webb is still in prison. He won't be eligible for parole until 2028. Judge Robert Caldwell is currently serving his sentence in a federal prison. He lost everything: his career, his reputation, his freedom. The same things his victims lost because of his corruption. So what can you do? Pay attention to judicial elections in your state. Research judges' campaign donors. Support victims' advocacy groups. Demand transparency and accountability. And if you or someone you know has been failed by the justice system, speak up. Report it. Share your story. Because the only way courts stop protecting criminals instead of victims is if we refuse to accept it anymore. Justice denied doesn't have to be justice forever. Sometimes, it just takes longer than it should. But it can happen. Change is possible. And it starts with people like you refusing to look away when the system fails. If you found value in this story, please like, comment, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more tips.